My name's Simon Fairlie. This is Monkton Wyld Court, where I've been living for 13 years and running a micro-dairy, probably the oldest micro-dairy in Britain. It's been going since 1941. I took over in 2010. We have 2 Jersey cows. We make cheese, butter, yoghurt and so forth, most of which gets sold up at the big house up there, which are 120 yards away. The place is quite highly structured. Everybody here has a role. It's a community, but it's also a business. And so if you want to apply to live here, you need to apply to fulfill a role. It might be a gardener, it might be office worker, it might be cook. But my role is the farmer, basically. And I run the farm, which is cow's milk and pigs, and I also do onions and potatoes on a sort of medium scale. But I participate in all the community meetings. We make community decisions together, and there isn't any boss. You know, decisions are made by consensus. The aims of the charity are to provide sustainable education, including land-based stuff, and you know, we get lots of volunteers coming here to learn things, but they want to learn about the farming and the growing and so forth, and maybe the cooking. A lot of people value the fresh food and just the ethos, and a lot of people come and they want to milk the cows or whatever, I should mention we also publish the Land magazine from here, so I hope some of you are readers of the Land magazine. I lived in a community in France back in the 1970s and came back to England. I got involved in the road protests, writing for green magazines, worked for the Ecologists for quite a time, helped found a community called Tinker's Bubble in Somerset, where I lived for about 10 years. One of the outcomes of the road protests in the 1990s was a movement to reclaim land. Initially it was the land is ours, and I was involved in that. It was started by George Monbiot, among other people. My position in the land is ours was really, I was this kind of planning spokesman, dealing with in particular helping people who are having difficulty getting planning permission in rural areas to run small holdings and bender camps and so forth, and I did quite a lot of work on that. Still do a bit, still publish a book called the Rural Planning Handbook. A lot of people find it very difficult living in communities, and it's a bit of a shame, really. Another problem is the price of land has absolutely rocketed. I mean, in 1994, when we bought Tinker's Bubble, we paid £1,300 an acre. Now you're lucky if you can get anything under £10,000 an acre, and that's simply, you can't pay that back out of agriculture. It's impossible. And I know quite a lot of young couples who've done their time learning the job, learning how to grow vegetables or whatever, and who want to get some land and set up their own holding, and they're finding it really, really difficult to find land at the moment. In pre-industrial times, every village was a farm, and people would look around them, they'd see the grass that was around them, and that was the basis of what they ate. It produced their milk, it produced their meat, and it produced their manure and the fertility for all their crops. And somehow that's been lost with a whole globalised approach to industrial farming, but it is reclaimable. And I see our little farm here as a sort of microcosm of that. Schools in particular, it would be brilliant if every school had its own farm that was producing its milk and its vegetables and its meat and so forth, and all that, and that would be, well, first of all, in terms of food miles and local food and fresh food, it would be an obvious bonus, but it would also be highly educational for all the kids who are at the school. Some people say there's not enough land in Britain to produce local food for everybody. Well, I've done quite a lot of work on this, in fact. It certainly can be done. It can be done organically. It can't be done if you want very large numbers of factory farmed chicken and pork fed with grain and soy and stuff that we import from elsewhere. But you can certainly provide a very healthy diet with a modicum of meat and dairy and so forth. And particularly dairy. I emphasise dairy because it is about 3 or 4 times as productive per acre of land as beef or sheep. Dairy is a way of building fertility and bringing in fertility so that you can grow crops. Because the dairy has now been put into factories and separated from the growing of crops, you've got huge problems because you're producing too much fertility, which is causing pollution and nitrogen and phosphate runoff into the rivers. At the other side of the country, you've got all these people growing grain and they've got no livestock at all. And so they're having to put nitrogen fertiliser and phosphate fertiliser onto their crops. So you've got a surplus of fertiliser in the west and too little in the east of the country. It's absolutely daft. And what we need to see is mixed farming returning both to the west of the country and the east of the country. And that's what we do here in very miniature form. There are several different kinds of high-tech alternatives to farming, one of which is vertical farming, which is lettuce basically. I don't think they got far beyond lettuce, and you can't feed humans on lettuce. Or you've got these stacker pig things in China and Vietnam where there's multi-storey pig things all fed on imported soya, and they're manifestly unsustainable. You've got lab meat, imitation cultured meat, which is really quite doubtful whether it can ever be commercialised at a sensible price, because the big problem with lab meat is it doesn't have an immunity system. Like an animal has its own immune system and therefore is quite resistant to infection. Cultured meat doesn't have that, and therefore it's highly susceptible to invasion by hostile bacteria. So the level of sterilisation has to be extraordinarily high. Thirdly, you have the bacterial protein, what I call studge, which is bacteria fed with hydrogen, and those bacteria create protein and I'm told fat as well. It doesn't sound terribly appetising. It means the whole food system will be totally industrialised, something that people like me who believe in human beings relating to the world around them and stewarding it are totally opposed to. These people just fail to understand, I think, the very deep and subtle relationship that farmers and anybody who works the land have with nature and the world around them. And it's done in the name of rewilding, but what it would actually do is de-wild humans and stick them into towns and feed them on studge and digital information. You know, it's a nightmare scenario as far as I can see. Well, the government is pushing robots on farms because they can't get the labour to pick all the fruit and stuff. I did a straw poll a couple of years ago, and I asked a number of people whether they had ever worked picking fruit or vegetables on a farm, and everybody over the age of 50 had, and everybody under the age of 35 hadn't. I blamed what do they call Generation X. All they want to do is go to university and sit on their computers and touch, whereas when we were their age, we provided the workforce for all the picking. Send them out picking vegetables, that's what I say. The place is a charity, it's run by trustees. At the end of last year, 2 of the trustees wanted to resign and some new trustees got co-opted on, and they've basically taken it upon them to run and manage the whole place themselves. In so doing, they've ordered 4 people to leave. Myself, Jill, who works with me on the Land magazine, Jasmine, the head gardener, and John, the office worker, have all been ordered to leave for pretty spurious reasons, frankly. I can't go into them here. As a result of that, 8 of the 12 people living here signed a vote of no confidence in the trustees. But the trustees are just ignoring that. They're basically dissolving the whole community that's been working here for the last 15 years. And we don't know what their plans are. We really don't. But they seem blissfully unconcerned to keep the farm and the garden going. They ordered that the work on the garden should lapse in the middle of June, and that's the sort of attitude they're taking towards the land-based activities here. They've they've ordered me to leave, which means that, you know, they're my cows and it's my equipment, so all the stuff that we put into it, invested in this place, will be going somewhere else, and they have to start all over again. And I find it very difficult, I think. We can't afford to take them to court. The next issue of the land has been put on hold, and hopefully we'll get it out at some point, but the future is looking quite uncertain at the moment, which is a bit sad. I mean, I have to say resisting eviction is a full-time occupation, I've discovered, and that hasn't left me much time for anything else. The purpose behind the land is we act in the belief that access to land is more key to people's happiness and their security and to democracy and independence and freedom. That's more important than access to money. That's what we believe. And that is what every peasant who has their own land or wants their own land in the world believes as well. And so that's the kind of mission that's behind the land, to emphasise that access to land is something that so many people have lost, and they don't even realise they've lost it, which is dreadfully sad, I think.